Hello everyone. This is Starry Ari's ASMR. I am Ari, and today in this video I have my recipe box here because I would like to write a few more recipe cards. So I have done this style of video once before, and I will go ahead and link that if you also want to check that one out. But this is my recipe box, and it is a white wood, and it says recipes on the front in black writing. And this recipe box has a little slant groove on the top so that you can set the card right on top while you're cooking or baking, and that kind of helps keep them a little bit cleaner. Not all mine are pristine though. So inside the recipe card box, this section here is the recipes that we have filled out so far. So as you can see, not very many, but we have quite a few cookbooks that we regularly cook out of, and so we feel like we don't really need to write like recipe cards for those. So these are things that maybe we find online or things that we've experimented with and we wanted to write down. And then all of these are lovely blank cards. And I have a few recipes today. I don't know if I'm going to get through all of them, but we're at least going to write out a few, and then we will sort them in here. So this blue section with the little chickens is like our savory dishes, maybe dinners, things like that, sides. And then this pink strawberry section back here is like desserts. And we could probably, once we have more recipes in here, like sort, like by, I don't know, like, meat or protein base or something like that, like chicken or beef, but we don't have enough in here to really make that worth it, so we don't. So that is our recipe box. And then let me show you, set this up to the side here. Show you some recipes that I want. Maybe I'll move this over here because of the shadow. I'm filming this in my kitchen, so our window and like sliding glass door on that side. So these are some recipes that I have printed out that we've used over the years that I know that I enjoy. And so many of these I've had to print out multiple times because they just get like, destroyed or like too dirty. So like this one has like water marks and stuff on it, so it's not too bad, but when sheets get like food splashed on them, I'm not a fan of that. I don't like that, so we usually have to reprint them. And having a card like this would be so much easier, something that we could just put right on top of the box, keeps it a little bit cleaner. So this one is just a short little like flimsy note card, and honestly I could just put this in the recipe box as is, but because we have so many blank cards that actually go with the box and they're prettier and nicer, I'm going to transfer this to one of those cards. But this is for our fried rice, and it's not really anything like big or special at all, but it is nice to have a card like this with the ingredients listed out so that when we are grocery planning, we know exactly what we need to get or check in our pantry and make sure that we have. So it's really nice to have something like this, even if we know the recipe pretty well. It's just still nice to have a card. So this is for our fried rice. And then this one here is actually 3 pages. I don't think it probably needed to be 3 pages, but this is for soft cut out sugar cookies. and this is by Sally's Baking Addiction, and I love Sally's Baking Addiction. If I'm looking for a new recipe for dessert, I usually like check there first. I just find that her recipes are usually kind of like exactly what I'm looking for. But these are her soft cutout sugar cookies. I really like these ones, but they do kind of turn out a little bit more like shortbready, at least the way that I do them. Maybe not the way that she does them, but for some reason, when I do them, they turn out a little more shortbready, which I like. I think they're really tasty. But I have a second sugar cookie recipe, and that is these no-chill sugar cookies. And these, I wrote on the top, tastes like store-bought. So if you've ever gotten those store-bought sugar cookies that have the like classic colorful like icing, and they just like, you know, they have them decorated for different holidays and stuff, at least in the US. I don't know if these exist elsewhere, if this is like a common experience elsewhere, but these taste so much like those cookies, but like a little bit better, like a less chemical-y version. And I think that I like absolutely loved them, and they're nice to have like another option, and especially because they are so easy to do. These ones, you don't have to refrigerate or chill them, so it's just so nice. Like, I do like Sally's Baking Addiction sugar cookies, but unfortunately, you know, you do have to chill them, just, you know, so that when you roll out the dough, like the shapes come out nicely. But this dough, you don't have to do that, so it's really quick, really easy. I really enjoyed these ones, so I do want to write out a recipe card for this. And this one, I think a lot of these recipes are for cookies today. So these ones are Cadbury egg cookies, and I made a video in the spring around Easter time making these Cadbury egg cookies. Cadbury mini eggs are like one of my favorite candies ever, and so I love Easter time when we can actually get them. And I made these cookies and they were adorable. We got the pastel like Cadbury mini eggs, and it was just so stinking cute. It was like having like a big M&M cookie, you know, with like very large M&Ms. Like, that's kind of what it tasted like, but it was so adorable with the Cadbury mini eggs. So I loved this recipe. Most of these things, when I bake cookies or desserts, my husband brings them in to work with him and like shares them with his coworkers, because like me working at home, I don't need to have all of these cookies at home all the time. And they like loved these cookies. These were some of their favorite cookies that I had made. So I definitely want to keep this recipe for next year. And this recipe here is for gingerbread cookies. And this one is also by Sally's Baking Addiction. And we have used this one for years. I think that I printed this out December 13th, 2020. And we had used this one even before that. But I think that's just when this copy was last printed, which is kind of surprising. I think surprising that I didn't, need to reprint this in all of that time, because I've made these gingerbread cookies every year since. But we love these gingerbread cookies. They like roll out so nicely. They taste so great. I love spicy gingerbread, so sometimes I'll add like a little bit of more cinnamon, a little bit of more ground ginger, but honestly, these are already pretty nicely seasoned, nicely spiced. So we love these gingerbread cookies, and I would like to write a recipe card. As you can see, this sheet is at least getting a little bit like crinkled and torn in a few places. And this one is our shrimp tacos. And this recipe, I don't actually know where it came from. I'm not seeing it anywhere. It says the author is Alyssa Rivers, so I think if I looked up like shrimp tacos Alyssa Rivers, it would probably come up. but we really like this one. We just like the seasoning mainly. I mean, it's not like we really need a recipe card for shrimp tacos. Like, they're so easy, but it is kind of nice having just like the seasonings laid out so that we know exactly what to grab from the spice cabinet before we're actually cooking them. So I would like to write this one out if I have the time. And this one is a meatloaf recipe. And again, oh, so this looks like it's coming from Natasha's kitchen. And I love meatloaf, but sadly my husband is just like on it. So we honestly don't really make meatloaf very much, especially because it is so much meat. I mean, it's literally like a loaf of meat, so it can get kind of spendy. So we especially for something that my husband is like about, like, you know, we'd rather spend money on like other meals that we both like, but I do still enjoy it. So if I have the time today, I would like to write this one out too. And then this one is just a silly little notebook piece of paper with like, you know, 3 things written down on it. But this is my cookie icing recipe that I've kind of like mixed around with, but I think that I've settled that depending on the day, depending on the humidity, and depending on the thickness of the icing that I'm trying to make, you know, like I usually need 2 cups of powdered sugar, 1.5 tablespoons of meringue powder, and then depending on all of those variables, like 4 to 5 tablespoons of water. So I would like to write this out so that it's not on this like dingy piece of paper. So those are all of the recipes I've pulled off to the side today. And I think I'm going to start, I'm going to organize some of these. Like if I don't get to like the meatloaf and the tacos, I'm okay with that. Cadbury egg cookies, I don't think I'm even going to use those until Easter. But I do think I at least want to do the cookies and the icing and the fried rice so that it's not on this little note card anymore. So I think I'm going to start with these. If I happen to have time today, I'll go through these as well. I also have other recipes that I didn't pull down, so if you want to see another video, I can definitely do that. This is like easy enough for me to just like set up my camera, and this is something I would be doing anyways. Okay, so I'm going to pull out, maybe I'll pull out like 5 cards to start with. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. So the first recipe that I'm going to write out is this fried rice. I also usually don't like fill in all of the things here. So this says like serves, prep time, cook time, all of that. We usually don't really fill that in. So I'm going to write fried rice. And then ingredients. We like to do 1 pound of chicken. And then I'm going to write cubed about 1 inch. And then we like to do 1 bag of mixed veggies. And I'm not going to write frozen. I wrote frozen here originally, but like we always use frozen. Actually, we have used fresh sometimes, and that works. It's just that frozen is like so much easier to like plan and just like have in the freezer already. And sometimes we've done just like carrots and peas. Sometimes we've done the like, you know, the more mixed veggies like carrots, peas, green beans, like corn, all that stuff. So it kind of depends on like what we're feeling. So we do need the 1 bag of mixed veggies. I'm leaving that pretty ambiguous, like I'm not writing the size of the bag because it kind of depends. Sometimes we've done less chicken if we wanted it to be more veggie focused. It all just kind of depends on what we want. And then we need 4 cloves, garlic, and we need that minced. And then I'm going to write 4 to 5 eggs, scrambled, in a bowl. I could write these like instructions for how to have the ingredients like in the actual instruction section, but I'm not going to do that. And then we need 3 tablespoons of soy sauce and 2 to 3 teaspoons of sesame oil and 2 cups of cooked rice. Okay. And then we try to have like rice that we cooked, maybe the day before, because I think that it fries up a little bit better. But sometimes we're just lazy and we just cook the rice the same day that we're doing the fried rice. So it just is what it is, and it's just whatever we end up doing. Alright, so that is all of the ingredients that we need for the fried rice. Super simple, really basic. And then now I'm going to write directions. This is where I'm going to be tested because I don't have directions here. I'm just going to have to remember the order of things. So I'm going to write 1. And I think I'm going to write, if not using prepared rice, start cooking rice. And then I'm going to add oil to large pan. I didn't write oil in the ingredients. I usually don't because we always have cooking oil. Like it's just like it'd be in my mind like writing, that you need a pan or something. Like we just always have it. So add oil to large pan and cook cubed chicken. And then once the chicken is cooked, remove chicken and set aside. And then now we're going to cook mixed veggies. And usually I like to just cook them in the chicken bits and the remaining oil that's left in the pan. So we're going to cook the mixed veggies and add minced garlic. And then once that is cooked, I like to move veggies to edge of pan. I don't write in full sentences usually on my recipe cards. So move the veggies to the edge of the pan and cook eggs in the middle. Okay. So once we do that, once the eggs are cooked, mix cooked eggs in to veggies and add chicken back in. Right, and then once we do that, then we're going to add the rice. So we're going to add the rice to the pan and mix together. And then once everything is nicely mixed together, then I like to add soy sauce and sesame oil. Okay, and then I forgot to write that we do salt and pepper. The chicken, so I'm going to write salt and pepper up here. Which again, I didn't write in the ingredients list, but that's okay. So this is a super basic recipe card. Honestly, if somebody else was reading this recipe, hopefully it's simple enough that they could understand, but we've made this enough times that it's just kind of on autopilot, but I still wanted to have a card for it. So I'm going to set this up here, and we've now done the fried rice card. So now I'm going to do my cookie icing recipe. Cookie icing. So I need 2 cups powdered sugar. And luckily this recipe does scale pretty nicely. I feel like some recipes, when you try and make less of it, it just for some reason comes out weirder, and it shouldn't, but it does. This one is pretty solid. I need 1.5 tablespoons of meringue powder. And 4 to 5 tablespoons of water. Okay. And for the instructions, what I'm going to do is actually just write out, add ingredients to stand mixer bowl. My neighbor was just screaming outside, so I had to cut, but I just wrote out that after we add the ingredients to the stand mixer bowl with the whisk attachment, we beat everything together on high speed for 1.5 to 2 minutes. And it also depends on the type of icing that I'm looking for. So for a flooding consistency, it's maybe a little bit different than if I'm just outlining. So it really kind of depends on what I'm looking for. I'm not going to write all of that down. Maybe in the future I will, but I honestly am still experimenting with things and figuring out what works best for me. And I did forget that sometimes if I want to flavor this, you can add food dye or extract flavoring, and it is best with a 1/4 teaspoon flavoring if wanted. And then I'm gonna just write food coloring, which is maybe not something that I need to write, but I am. And this is our easy cookie icing. Super simple. I just wanted it to not be on this kind of crummy piece of paper. Alright, now I think we're really getting into it. So this recipe is for my gingerbread cookies. Well, not mine. They're Sally's Baking Addiction gingerbread cookies. I'm always jealous of people that like make their own recipes, and we do that with like some dinners, but I very rarely do that with baking. It's like usually other people have figured it out pretty well, and I can like copy what they do pretty well. So gingerbread cookies, and then I'm gonna write in parentheses Sally's Baking Addiction, so I know that where these came from, or if somebody else was looking at this card, they know where it came from. Okay, so for the gingerbread cookies, we first need 10 tablespoons of unsalted butter. 10 tablespoons of, I'm going to say softened, unsalted butter. And honestly, most of the time I just use margarine and leave a little bit of the salt out, but I'm going to write it as is. And then I'm going to do 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar. 3/4 cup brown sugar. I'm just writing brown sugar because it says light or dark brown sugar. So I'm just going to write brown sugar. I think we usually end up just getting light brown sugar. And then we need 2/3 of a cup of molasses. We need 1 large egg at room temperature. 1 large egg, room temperature. Okay. And then we need 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract. 1 teaspoon vanilla extract. We need 3.5 cups of all-purpose flour. 3 cups flour. We need 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Teaspoon. This reminds me that I actually need to get more baking soda soon. 1 teaspoon of baking soda. A 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And I'm still going to write that just in case I happen to ever use actually unsalted butter, but just in case. And then we're on to kind of these spices. So we need 1 tablespoon of ground ginger, and it says yes, 1 full tablespoon. 1 tablespoon ground ginger. And 1 tablespoon of cinnamon. We never have not ground cinnamon, so I'm just going to write 1 tablespoon of cinnamon. We need 1/2 teaspoon of allspice. 1/2 teaspoon allspice. 1/2 teaspoon of ground cloves. 1/2 teaspoon cloves. And then I'm not gonna write the royal icing. I'm gonna know whether I want to make that or not. So we have all of the ingredients for our gingerbread cookies here. So let's get started on the instructions, which I think maybe aren't actually too bad. So I'm gonna read through them before I actually start writing so that I know what to actually write and what's important. So this first step, it says, in a large bowl using a handheld mixer or stand mixer fitted with a paddle attachment, beat the butter for 1 minute on medium speed until completely smooth and creamy. So I'm going to start with that. So I'm going to say, I like to use my stand mixer if I can. So say in stand mixer with paddle attachment. I started this one on the first line rather than the other ones. I started below because the spoon kind of goes on it, but I think that I might need a lot of writing space for this recipe. So with paddle attachment, I'm going to write cream, butter, and then I'm going to write add brown sugar and molasses. And beat on medium-high speed. Alright, and then I am going to write scrape down sides and bottom of bowl as needed. Okay, and then we need it says next beat in egg and vanilla on high speed for 2 full minutes. Beat in egg and vanilla on high speed for about 2 full minutes. Okay. I don't think I'm going to write like the butter may separate. That's okay. So the next one, it says, in a separate bowl, whisk the flour, baking soda, salt, ginger, cinnamon, allspice, and cloves together until combined. And I think that is all of the rest of the dry ingredients. So I'm just going to write whisk, well, in a separate bowl, whisk dry ingredients together until combined. Remaining dry ingredients together. Okay, and then I'm gonna put on low speed, slowly mix into wet ingredients. Okay. And it says the cookie dough will be quite thick and slightly sticky. Divide dough in half and place each into a large piece of plastic wrap. Okay, so I'm going to say divide dough in half and wrap discs in plastic wrap. And then chill for at least 3 hours and up to 3 days. It says chilling is mandatory for this cookie dough. I always chill mine overnight. Okay, so I'm going to say just chill 3+ hours. I didn't want an entire new line just for the chill 3+ hours. And then honestly, I don't think I would just like leave it in the fridge for up to 3 days. Like usually what I would do, I have done, is like put one disc in the fridge and then freeze the other disc. And that it freezes really nicely. You just have to then take it down in the fridge for about a day before you actually roll it out and use it for the cookies. So I'm going to leave out like the rest of the information. Okay, so then once that's chilled for 3 or more hours, what we're going to do is preheat oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Line baking sheets. And I don't think I'm going to write with parchment paper silicone baking mats because I know what line baking sheets means. Okay, and then now we're going to basically just work the dough. So it says remove 1 disc of chilled cookie dough from the refrigerator. Generously flour a work surface. So I'm going to write flour work surface. As well as your hands in the rolling pin. I'm not going to write that out. I think that's okay. Don't be afraid to continually flour the work surface as needed. This dough can be sticky. Roll out disc until 1/4 inch thick. So I'm just going to write out to roll out the disc until 1/4 inch thick. So flour work surface and roll out 1 disc until 1/4 inch thick. And cut. I'm just going to put cut. Hopefully I know that I mean cut into shapes. And then place shapes 1 inch apart on prepared baking sheets. Re-roll dough scraps until all the dough is shaped. Repeat with remaining disc of dough. I'm not going to write all of that. Again, these are mostly just for us. So if I know that, then I think it's fine. Maybe I'll write cut shapes. It's kind of cramped on that side. Alright. So once we cut the shapes, again, I'm not going to write like put on the baking pan because like I know that. And then I'm going to do bake cookies for about 9 to 10 minutes. And it does have like different timings for, you know, if your cookie cutters are smaller or larger, but I don't think I'm gonna write that. And then you can, like if your oven has hot spots, it says that be sure to rotate the pan once during bake time. I'm honestly not that picky with these cookies. I usually just like throw them in the oven and like let them do whatever. And then it says, allow cookies to cool for 5 minutes on the cookie sheet, then transfer to cooling rack to cool completely. Okay, so I am gonna write, so cool cookies on baking sheet for 5 minutes, then transfer to cooling rack. Okay, and then I think that's it. So it says, once completely cool, decorate as desired. Cookies stay fresh, covered at room temperature for up to 1 week. Okay, I think that is pretty much everything I want to write. Again, you would probably like write something different than what I'm doing, but I feel like I can follow these instructions. I left out things that I feel like I don't really need in my instructions. You know, maybe if like my husband or even like if my mom was reading this, maybe she'd be like, I would like a little more information on some of these things, but hopefully that's okay enough. And that was our gingerbread cookies. And I think I maybe have time to do one more, and I'm going to do these no-chill sugar cookies. And I think what I'm probably gonna do is write like sugar cookies and then no-chill separately, so that when I'm sorting my cards, I will have both sugar cookie recipes together, instead of like if I was I like to sort them alphabetically. Sometimes I get messed up, but I like to sort them alphabetically, so if I did no-chill sugar cookies, they would go on the ends, and I don't think that really makes sense. So I'm gonna write sugar cookies dash no-chill, and then in parentheses I think I'm gonna write, maybe I'll write AKA store-bought. And again, hopefully I'll know what that means. I think I would know what that means. It's like they taste like the store-bought cookies. Alright, so for this one we need 1 cup of room temperature butter. 1 cup room temp butter. We need 1 1/3 cups of powdered sugar. And I think this recipe is really clever because you, instead of sprinkling flour on your workstation, you sprinkle powdered sugar. So it says plus extra for sprinkling. I'm not going to write that out. I, would always have more than the powdered sugar that I would actually need like in my pantry. So I'm not going to write the plus extra for sprinkling. But I thought that was so clever because it doesn't like have the cookies get like a different texture. It's just they're a little bit sweeter with the powdered sugar. And we need 1 large egg. We need 2 teaspoons vanilla extract. And I have flavored these ones and the other Sally's Baking Addiction sugar cookies. I have flavored them with other things and they come out nice. We need 3 3/4 cups of all-purpose flour. So I need 3 3/4 cups flour. We need 2 teaspoons of baking powder. And we need 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Okay, so that is all of our ingredients. Honestly, pretty simple, doesn't really take a whole lot. Again, I flavored it with like different flavorings and it's worked out nicely. So for the instructions, we're going to first preheat oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit and line baking sheets. Okay. And then the next step says, in a large bowl, beat the butter and sugar together until well combined, about 2 to 3 minutes. And then I think I'm gonna just beat the butter and sugar together. I use my stand mixer if I can. So I'm gonna say beat butter and sugar together until combined, about 2 to 3 minutes. Add the egg and vanilla, beat until combined. Add egg and vanilla, beat until combined. Then we're going to stir in the flour, baking powder, and salt. Stir in flour, baking powder, and salt. Sprinkle extra powdered sugar onto a surface. So I'm going to write sprinkle powdered sugar onto a work surface. And it says roll out the cookie dough to a 1/4 inch thick on the powdered sugar surface. I'm not going to write on the powdered sugar surface. I'm just going to write roll out cookie dough. I think you'll probably maybe be able to hear my dog snoring the entirety of this video. Roll out cookie dough to 1/4 inch thick. Okay. And I think I'll write and cut out shapes. Okay. So it says use cookie cutters to cut desired shapes. Place cut dough on prepared baking sheets spacing about 2 inches apart. Again, I'm not going to write that out. Bake for about 7 to 9 minutes. Okay, 9. Bake about 7 to 9 minutes. Okay, don't overbake. The cookie should not be brown. I am going to write that. Don't overbake. Cookies should not be brown. Okay. Let stand for 5 minutes on baking sheet. Remove to a wire rack to finish cooling before decorating. So I'm going to write cool on baking sheet. For 5 minutes. transfer to cooling rack. Okay. And I think there are just a few notes on here. It says the flour is given in grams, but it wasn't on here, so I wonder if on the website it's like written in, but when you do the print sheet, it isn't given in grams. But I usually will do the like cup to gram conversion online before I measure my flour, because I like to try and do the exact amount of flour anyways. So I think those are all kind of the helpful notes. So we now have our no-chill sugar cookies written out, which is very nice. And we didn't quite get to the other cookies or the tacos or the meatloaf, but I think that is kind of all that I have time for today. So if you would like to see another of these videos, please let me know, and I could make another one with these recipes, maybe some of the other ones that I still have to write. So we did 4 recipes. So I'm gonna put this extra recipe card back. And then let's now sort these. So these sugar cookies. See, there are some things that I wish. I'm going to put these behind the strawberry sauce, but when I originally wrote some of these, like this is lactose-free tiramisu, I wish that I had wrote it tiramisu and then dash lactose-free, because now I sort it with the L's. I could still sort it with the T's, but that's just a me problem. And then we have our gingerbread cookies, some of our baked bananas, our skinny banana bread muffins. See, again, I just wrote the title of the recipe, but I think I sort these as banana bread muffins. So I think this system would drive somebody else insane. Cheese. And our cookie icing. It's going to be after B. And then our fried rice, the only savory one that we did today, is going to go in here right before the instant. See, we wrote instant pot chicken pot pie soup. I wish I had just put chicken pot pie soup. But this one is going to go there. Here we go. So we now have our recipes sorted away in my little recipe box. I hope that you enjoyed spending this time with me as I just kind of wrote out some recipes. Hopefully the way I wrote out instructions didn't drive you too crazy. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you